We welcome you to another edition of Economic Forum where we discuss various issues affecting our economy. Today we are going to revisit the topic on leadership. We're going to be looking at how leaders govern themselves, how they regulate themselves, and we're also going to look at how women are promoted on boards or rise in boards in order to occupy positions of higher authority, as well as even in the companies, in the executives, and so forth. We're also going to look at the youth. How are they being mentored in order for them to become future, not only future, but competent future directors? And to discuss all these issues, we've invited Kangai Maukazuva, who is the chairman of the Institute of Directors in Zimbabwe. Welcome, Kangai.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity.
The first thing, who do you classify as a director at the institute? Because there are so many people who are called directors. I sometimes become a director of ceremonies. I become a funeral directors and so forth. But as far as our discussion here is concerned, Who are you looking at?
Directors, we are looking at those individuals who are tasked with the role of oversight of how companies are governed, how they are controlled, and how they are directed, providing leadership to management or executive management, but also representing the interests of the shareholders. So these are men and women that we call directors.
Tell us about your organization, a little bit about it, so that we appreciate some of these things that you're doing. The Institute of Directors in Zimbabwe. Why did you establish this organization, and what are the functions that you are seized with?
The Institute of Directors is a board that is comprised of members who have got a passion for leadership. Men, women, and the youths join the Institute of Directors in order to learn, to network, to be groomed, and to be practitioners at the governance level. The Institute is seized with good governance, ethical governance, inspiring morality at leadership level. So this is what the Institute is all about.
Is your membership concentrated only in the private sector, or you're also luring some members from the public sector?
We do have members from the public sector as well as members from the private sector. And we see that because we do work together with even the corporate governance unit that was formed under the OPC in order to drive corporate governance or good leadership and good corporate governance. So we are both private and public.
Now, tell us about some of the things that you have been working on. We've heard actually some of your leaders in the past coming here to talk mainly about corporate governance. How far have you gone? We know that you've come up with some booklets and so forth, but a booklet is just a booklet, and what happens out there is different. Have you adopted the Zim code that we're working on, the code of corporate governance that you have been seized with all these years?
So the issue of good governance is very important in the way organizations are run. I think you recall that around 2004, 2005, we had banks collapsing because of the absence of good leadership and good governance. So we have a number of instruments that have been put together in order for us to drive good governance in institutions. Number one, I talked about the issue of the constitution, that it states that the state should come out with laws and regulations where all institutions are supposed to be led by accountable people, responsible people, providing financial probity and, accountability around that. Number two, we have seen a lot of changes because we've been probing and providing advocates in this area. Number one, if you look at from the government side of things, the government set up the CGU, which is the Corporate Governance Unit. And after that, it set up an act, Good Corporate Governance Act for public entities. And then you also saw that there was a revision of the Companies Act recently, and also the National Code of Good Governance, which is really the foundation of good governance in companies that we see. So we have seen that. We've also seen that institutions in different sectors are also adopting their own. For instance, in the banking sector, you've got the Banking Act. In the mining sector, you've got something that also governs. So there are also sectorial actions around making sure that there's corporate governance from licensing to operations of the business.
And when we're talking about directors, what qualifications are we looking at? Be they academic, be they professional, and also the competencies that you look at, because at the end of the day, when a company is collapsing, those are the things then people ask in retrospect.
Sure. The most important thing is the quality of leadership that an individual has, the experience that they have got, and then the competencies that they can bring on board for boards, right? And then we talk about qualifications. Of course, different companies set up minimum qualifications, whether they're academic or professional. But the most important thing for a leader to have is integrity. What is their integrity level? No criminal records, for instance, because you can't take a director with a criminal record and ask them to lead and govern, management. Otherwise, those are very critical. So we look at the quality of leadership, the level of experience, and as of today, companies are looking for specific expertise in order to drive their strategies.
Maybe before we finish this segment, say something about how far the actual adoption has gone, and also how it is pinning down you as members in case there are some anomalies in one's leadership. The adoption of the code that we're talking about, how far it has gone, and how you can actually use it to say, no, so-and-so is no longer fit to be a director, do something about it.
So the code itself has brought about self-regulation of boards. So it calls for boards to be able to assess their own competencies, to assess their own work and their own performance, okay? As much as the board also assess the competence and the performance of the companies that they lead, but the board has also to assess itself. So it provides
that progress in that regard.
I'm seeing progress in that. And then the board is called on things like committees to be established with professional knowledge and competence to deal with specific business issues. And we are seeing a lot of companies setting up those competencies. Number 3, the board is the code itself is also called upon members not just to be on the board. We now mark the register. Did you attend to all committees? Did you attend to, are you contributing? So that's some of the things that the code has actually brought. Not only that, the issue of board charter, board induction are becoming we see in newspapers where people are actually calling for tenders. Can you come? We need to induct this board. We need board members to be trained. And that's all came from adopting the code of good governance in Zimbabwe.
Kangai Maukazua, very interesting points that you are raising. Kangai is the chairman of the Institute of Directors in Zimbabwe, IODZ. He has been telling us about the institute and what they are doing, and in the next segment we shall be looking at how then they are also involving women, and later on how they are involving the youth in order for them to rise in these boards. Join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing with Kangai Maukazua, who is the chairman of the Institute of Directors in Zimbabwe, and is taking us through the steps that they've gone through in order to improve governance in different organizations by capacitating the directors. And I mentioned earlier on that we are going to be looking at how you are promoting women on the boards as well as at executive level. I can tell you that in our own sector, we are still struggling in terms of having women CEOs in media organizations or even chairing boards and so forth. What is the overall picture in the country, Kangai?
So thank you, John, for that. Embracing women and diversity on boards is a critical issue. It's actually a foundation or a pillar of good governance in its own, because it's diversity. So the issue of gender parity that you've just raised is quite critical globally, because globally they are saying that a board should have a minimum of 3 women on it, which is a minimum of 30% when you look at the average numbers on board.
Usually boards have up to how many members?
10, 11, 12. or even more, depending on the size of the company and the issues to be addressed by the board itself. So we are seeing that a research that was done globally says only 22% of global boards have got 3 or more women as directors of the boards, which means we are still far below. Not just that, there is an anticipation that actually should be a 50-50 kind of, in order to achieve board parity. So in Zimbabwe, the Institute of Directors carried out a survey last year. And out of the survey, about 287 directors responding to it. And out of the 287, only 80 female board members or women board members responded to that. And that represents only about 28%. So when you look at 28% with the need to actually move across to 50%, that is very, very low. So there's a lot of work that we are doing as the Institute of Directors in order to embrace the qualities and perspective that women brings on board. We've got what we call Women on Boards Zimbabwe, WOBZ. So that fundamental brand is bringing women onto discussing leadership issues, training women to become future leaders.
And so while we're there, you're talking about what you're doing as the institute.
Yes.
But right from the basics, right from the basic levels, is there anything that you're doing? For instance, going out to schools and encouraging the girl child not to shun being a prefect, not to shun leadership positions, so that it does not only begin when they are going into the world of work.
That's a very important, a very fundamental point that you're raising. What we are trying to do is in our future programs, you recall that we had all this COVID disrupting the plans that we had. So going forward, we actually want to interact with women at that level, with ladies, with girls at that level. So we'll be churning out programs where we'll be going to high schools, where we'll be going to colleges, where we'll be going to universities, where we'll be visiting people that are actually being trained under apprenticeship or under internship in order for them to be embraced as future leaders of this nation. And also with our youth program, which is the Future Directors, it will resonate very, very well.
Yes. We'll come to the youth program, but back to the women who you're trying to elevate so that they're also members at a high level of these boards. Do they support each other? Because at times we hear, maybe in social media and other platforms, that when it comes to actually supporting each other, there's this, what they call the pull hair down syndrome. Are we seeing women actually advocating for other women to be in top positions?
So when we provide platforms where women can interact, groom each other, encourage each other, motivate each other, we see that there's a consensus in that they need to drive that important demographic, which is more than men, to actually take leadership positions. But the challenge is studies have shown us that when it comes to the actual work, to rolling the sleeves, women tend to support men than other women. That comes out from studies.
It's not Kangai who is saying that.
It's not me, it's studies. Mm-hmm. But what we are here to do is to encourage them. Because once you become a leader of integrity with good ethical and moral principles, there's no way you can shun any other individual, whether they are men or women or disabled. So we are coming together to bring everyone on board and say we are all equal. Let's move together with leadership, with good ethical ways of running our business, with good governance, with best practices. And that's what we are trying to achieve.
Yes. Just very briefly, why then is it that eyebrows are raised when women are then elevated to those top posts? Or is it a thing of the past? Now it is acceptable that a woman can rise to the top without any favoritism or any other ill-considered approaches.
Well, the need to embrace women in leadership positions is an SDG matter. It doesn't start here in Zimbabwe. It's a global issue. So when it becomes a global issue, it comes into our nation and it goes into communities. Yes, there are certain communities that have not embraced women as such. And our role is to make sure that they change that mentality and that shift, that paradigm shift, in order to make sure that they embrace the capabilities and capacity of women in that. So yes, we hear about that, but right now when you look at boards and leadership positions, we are actually seeing that women are taking those, and we are encouraging them more and more to come on board, and we are not seeing any negativity around who is taking this role.
Including when they go out to the communities and they are introduced as CEOs of certain organizations who have come to address the communities, including men, including some of those you call male chauvinists. Do you see an improvement that they're acceptable, that a woman can actually come as a CEO and solve your problem?
Well, we're seeing that in political circles, where women MPs are actually going to communities and gather people around under a tree or and talk to them and give them a perspective of how the communities can be developed around and what projects they can do. And I think women are very strong in bringing projects into the communities, and that's what people need. It's about developing development progressively.
We're talking about leadership and governance, and our guest today is Kangai Maukazula, who is the chairman of the Institute of Directors Zimbabwe. We'll be going into what they're doing about the youth in the third segment, but do remember that you can get in touch with us about this program on the numbers that are showing on your screen, and if you have missed some episodes, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So join us in the third and final segment. Welcome to the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where we are talking about leadership and governance with Kangai Maukazula, who is the chairman of the Institute of Directors. We've talked about ZimCode, how you are improving the ethical standards as well as governance and issues among boards or among board members. We've talked about how you are elevating women to be leaders on the boards as well as in the corporate sector. Now let's look at the youth. In fact, the institute itself has done good, because you are a young person yourself, Kangai, and you're already the chairman of the Institute of Directors. What are you doing in order to bring more young persons onto the boards and also to lead companies without people saying that this is a youngster, what can they tell us?
We believe that the youth are the future. Any organization that needs sustainability or continuity have to look at the capacity that is engrossed within the youth themselves. As the Institute, we actually have a program that we call Future Directors. And Future Directors is about harnessing the youths, the boys and the girls, to come on board, because these are future entrepreneurs, future leaders, future, even politically, they're going to be the future of the leadership. Because they will grow, and when they grow, they need to have come through these meals where we impart them with ethical skills, integrity, good leadership, and we're grooming those. So yes, we have recognized that there's a lot of potential for youths who are today. We've got so many youths with business of their own, that. We've got youths that are being successful in business, but we want them to know what governing a business means, what directing a business means, what investing in a business should be in an ethical way, the good morals, the good leadership that we expect for good governance.
While you are there, Kangai, I've made an observation, especially at schools, where youngsters shun being prefects or head boys and head girls because they think that is going to disturb them in their studies. And in some instances, their parents support them. And you have some schools which really don't have some programs of developing leaderships or in their schools, like taking them out for leadership training and so forth. Say something about how this can actually begin at schools, so that when it comes to you at your level, your work becomes very easy in nurturing some of these leaders.
Well, leaders, they are good leaders with qualities that you can pick at a very young age. But I believe that everyone can be a good leader, provided the opportunity to be guided on what the role is when you're leading other people. And there are also good leaders with good qualities, but they can also miss it in terms of the way they behave or the way that they treat other people. So it's really taking this into, there's so many institutes that are reaching out at ground level. You can talk about the UNICEF, bringing education into schools, into rural schools. Those are the institutions that we will be partnering with in order to make sure that we reach out with good programs that can unearth leadership competencies at youth level. But like I've said before, we are also trying to look at how do we reach out to high schools, how do we reach out to universities, and those programs are actually in the pipeline. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that much during the past years because of competencies, COVID issues. But right now, it's time for us to unleash and reach out and make sure that we bring up the youths to take part. And I believe there's a lot of motivation. Like when you look at schools today, when you are a prefect, you are motivated. You are given a badge. People talk about you. So those are the qualities that we need to bring up from that level.
And the parents as well as the teachers also need to be motivated, because they are the ones who are going to remain behind with these students, carrying your message that they should not shun leadership positions. They should not think that, being prefect or being head boy is going to be a waste of time.
True, I agree with you. Because when we start featuring leaders at that level, in Zimbabwe we have got junior councils with junior MPs. We actually have got a junior MP, a female.
We had a junior mayor the other day on this program.
Exactly. So when we start profiling the leadership in these youths, those parents will read, will watch, will see, and they will begin to appreciate the role that they have in order for them to actually groom their children into leadership position at home.
Kangai, I'll just give you a few seconds to say something about the Director of the Year award. That what do you do in brief to make it a credible award? Because you can say, I'm the Director of the Year, and when people look at what I'm bringing, how I'm leading people, it's completely different. I could have just worked for the award, for the judges, without actually showing it throughout the year that I'm a good leader who actually delivers results. Very briefly, because that's one of the issues that you deal with towards the end of the year, to look at who has performed much better than other directors. Yeah.
So the Director of the Year award is something that was instituted globally. So you've got the Institute of Directors, where IODZ also affiliates to. Okay, so there's what we call a director competence framework, and that framework is the one that is used. It's a global framework. It's the one that is used to look at, within the context of Zimbabwe, who has actually achieved certain specific issues that we'll be looking at. Like now, I think the issue about organizational transformation, issues about digital transformation, issues about sustainability are very key. So when we look at that, we look at the competence, which is a framework that is globally accredited, and we've got a committee that is outside of IODZ that is chaired by reputable people. Like the current chair is actually the former mayor and a reputable director, Mr. Muchale Masunda. So it's actually done independently and objectively using a global framework that looks at critical issues around the performance of the directors, even also including the company's performance, the financial performance, the impact that the business is making. So
and human capital.
Exactly. So it's actually a very globally recognized. It's not something to talk about just here. You can take it globally and say, I was a director of the year offered by the Institute of Directors.
I'll stop you there. Kangai Maukazuva, who is the chairman of the Institute of Directors in Zimbabwe, who has been telling us about governance, about how women are being helped to be elevated into senior positions, as well as preparing the youth for directorship positions. Kangai, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much, John. Forum. Thank you very much. We look forward to future interactions.
Yes, until next time on Economic Forum, this is John Masugu.